Okay, since my phone is mostly charged and I'm taking a break from cleaning, we're just gonna read yet another Tumblr post discussing the bigotry in the Murderbot Diaries. This time the original post is by Novella November, and it was published November 9th, 2025, for posterity. Today is May 2nd, 2026. The 13th story in the series, which Martha Wells has fucking named Platform Decay, which is literally a synonym for enshittification, so she is actively making it more difficult for people who are actually anti-capitalist to discuss the fucking death of the goddamn internet via corporate greed by naming her book that, unironically, which means it will clog fucking search results for people who are actually trying to talk about the concept of platform decay. Anyways, Novella November said, November 9th or whatever I just said, in 2025, you might see some more rant posts about racism in the Murderbot Diaries because more people are reading the books from the Humble Bundle deal and are posting more wholesome racist rhetoric, without even being aware of what they're doing, usually, on my dash. So, and then a smiley face that's melting, which it conveys, like, hopelessness, and it's not a genuine smile. Melting smiley face means, like, hopelessness. You know, like the meme of the dog in the kitchen that's on fire saying, "This is fine." It's kind of like that. This series is so good at training its audience to turn their brains off and only embrace the surface-level vibes of the prose without looking deeper. It's pretty much my moral obligation to continue speaking out against such insidious forms of racism. Even if the characters who are slave owners in the series are quirky, queer, brown characters who aren't technically slave owners because they're nice people who merely willingly rented a slave. Hey guys, I don't know who needs to hear this, but renting a slave from a plantation to stay on your temporary farm you're surveying, to do all the farm work, cooking, and cleaning for your group of settlers for a month, with the full intention of returning the person you're renting as property to their original plantation you're borrowing from, but then you decide you like this enslaved person so much you want to buy them to come live at your own permanent plantation 2 states over, where you say they'll be considered a full free citizen, but slavery is still in force, and they'll still have to be registered as personal property only after they've saved your life multiple times, and where they will still literally be considered property and working alongside the other slaves your entire plantation keeps, but you insist is somehow different to the original plantation, how the original plantation kept slaves? Yeah, sorry, you can't say these people who are renting and owning slaves aren't really slave owners just because the books frame them as pure cinnamon rolls who only do harm by accident, and if it's by accident, you can't blame them for the harm they do. And then, Novella November linked to, let me click on it so I can just read you the full URL. facingsouth.org/2019/04/twisted sources how Confederate propaganda ended South's school books. And then in between that whole string of stuff at the last, there's just little dashes in between. Oh, no, I clicked on it by accident again. And then next URL is neh.gov/project/ okay, that might, hold on. I think this is the wrong URL. I think they changed the URL. Okay, that URL seems to be broken now. In the post, the preview says Frederick Douglass's narrative, Myth of the Happy Slave, but when you click it, it looks like the website. Oh, that's why. Okay. Okay, if I hover over it, go to the website. The link is slightly broken because it's an official website of the United States government, so the Trump administration removed the original fucking webpage. So if you hover over it on the post, you can see the original URL was I don't know. Let me copy that. Hold on. Wow, guys, it's almost like this is actual fucking censorship. And let me go. I have to open the Internet Archive and go to the Wayback Machine. Okay, thankfully they have a bunch of archives going back to 2019. We'll just click on the oldest one. Okay, so the URL, because the Trump administration has removed the current one, web.archive.org/web 2019-070-11226/https://edit citement.nih.gov/lesson plans/Frederick Douglass narrative myth happy slave. I'll just link it in the description of this video when it's actually uploaded so that I can edit it from my computer. You have to go to the Internet Archive to find it now because, you know, actual censorship. Actual historical revision by white supremacist slavery apologists. Okay, those are the two things that Novella November links. After the sarcastic statement of, the slave owners are pure cinnamon rolls who only do harm by accident, and since they're only hurting people by accident, you can't blame them for the harm they do. And then continues, if you would like to read Frederick Douglass's first-hand account yourself, and then in parentheses, I'm downloading it as I type, you can read the whole thing for free here on Project Gutenberg, as the book is public domain, and then links to, click. This one's an easy URL, gutenberg.org/ebooks/23. That's it. That's all you gotta type. Just do that. You're good. It said, edit. Here is another great link talking about pro-slavery propaganda being in Southern textbooks all the way up until 1971, and we know even more is being inserted in modern times, including the fact that that link is now literally broken. Because of the exact same people that are putting the slavery apologism in textbooks have now literally erased that from the fucking internet unless you use the Wayback Machine. And then said, edit 2. The author of the article that was previously below decided to throw in some Zionist genocide-enabling racist rhetoric in the literal last sentence of the article, so I deleted that link. Not getting any clicks from my direction. For anyone who wants to argue, it can't really be racism because the author is nice. Racism is not something that only conservative Trump or KKK members are capable of, and just because an author is not marching in white sheets does not mean they're incapable of perpetuating racism and racist rhetoric. Yes, even if they make the slave owners in their works be token brown people, them giving their characters diverse names and skin tones does not erase the rampant, insidious racism baked into the story and plot lines and themes of the work. And then somebody named Feed the Birds said, thank you, genuinely, for encouraging me to think about a series I really love in this light. These are important issues in both real life and literature that everyone should engage with. While I agree it is a moral obligation to speak out against racism, I don't think this series in particular is trying to train the audience not to look deeper than the surface level of the story. And I gotta get a drink. Blah. I don't like lemonade, but lemonade tea is all we got. The speculative I'm not even the one this is directed at, and I'm infuriated. I'm so tired of this. I can't talk all of a sudden. The speculative aspect of science fiction has often been used for social protest and cultural self-examination, such as 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale. I believe the systemic overuse of short-form entertainment and of social media in general is to blame for a lack of reading comprehension and critical thinking, but that's a separate issue. And then I just have to scroll down quick because they put the rest of their post under a read more. And by the way, if you are on Tumblr, never ever do that with anything on your posts that you think is important, because if your blog ever gets deleted by accident, which literally happens, if you change your URL, if you delete that post, everything under the read more is gone forever. And also, if people are trying to argue with you that slavery apologism is good, don't let them keep shit under the read more, because just like deleting the post that it's on deletes it forever, you can edit what is under there at any point and nobody will be able to track that. So I after Novella November responded to their whole thing, but before I go back up and read that, I copied and pasted their shit into its own thing so everybody can read it in case they change their URL or delete the post or any of that other bullshit, because I've been combating fandom racism and other forms of fandom bigotry for decades at this point, and I know how this shit goes. Don't let these people hide shit under a read more. It's never going to go well. So anyways, I copied it into the post. So they said, I don't think Martha Wells ignores the fact that the Prezox team were active participants in Murderbot slavery. Excluding the TV show, all we get from the books is that they agreed to rent Sec Unit with the rest of the habitat, and that nobody liked it. They did it anyway, though, and although it doesn't say this explicitly in the text, I believe Prezox caved to the Corporation Rim's pervasive assumption that constructs are objects. I don't know why I'm out of breath. I was just sleeping. They were still perpetuating and implicitly condoning slavery, but in the sense that they're fighting against a massive society's worth of beliefs and got crushed under it. So it's still their fault, but understandable, and then in parentheses, and relatable to those of us who are fighting to be ethical consumers under capitalism, for example, and then end parentheses. Oh, I won't comment. I will refrain from commenting. Prezox meant well by buying Sec Unit's contract and quote-unquote freeing it, but both Sec Unit and Dr. Mensa acknowledged that it was approached in a pet bot objectification type situation. Sec Unit's permission or input was never asked, and it all happened while it was unconscious and still being repaired. There were no long-term plans made or even discussed for what Sec Unit wanted to do or how it would live on preservation. All of that is definitely a major problem. But then Sec Unit breaks their expectations and leaves, which is a very clear demonstration of self-determination and personhood. It refuses to allow Prezox to pat themselves on the back for doing the right thing and buying its contract, and it forces them to realize how little they really thought this plan through. I will refrain from commenting. The practice of buying slaves to free them did actually happen, i.e. the Quakers during the 18th century in the U.S. It's also Denzel's Plan A in The Equalizer, so it's not an uncommon idea even in fiction. However, slave owners still view these people as slaves, so they actively try to recapture, resell, and re-enslave anyone of that race/category that isn't already actively enslaved. One solution that both 18th century contemporaries and later Prezox uses is to purchase the slave's contract, tell the person they're free, but since it's not safe and or illegal for black people/constructs to be free, and please note, they don't capitalize the B in black. Invite them to live on their land and maybe do some work for them, but get paid for it on the down low. This happens to Sec Unit later on when it goes back to working on Prezox, and in Network Effect when Thiago tells Amina she needs a copy of Sec Unit's contract, it's specifically so that corporates they run into can't recapture Sec Unit. Not because they're actually enslaving Sec Unit. I'd say it's similar to people getting married for insurance or career benefits, because they're both ways to rules lawyer protection out of an actively hostile system. Today, prison labor in the U.S. is used for a lot of products, to the point that the amendment banning slavery in the Constitution has an exception for people in prison, protecting that practice. My income tax helped to pay for the prison system that perpetuates this modern slavery. I don't condone this, obviously, but in order to live in this society, I have to pay taxes. Unfortunately, all I can do is pay my taxes while self-educating, voting, advocating, and protesting the issue for a chance at a better future. The Prezox team and Pin Lee, and they're spelling Pin Lee without a space or a dash, which is how it is spelled, so that's weird. The Prezox team, and Pin Lee in particular, are fighting externally against construct slavery in the CR, and internally to change guardianship laws on preservation. Pin Lee is trying to get Sec Unit refugee status on preservation as a replacement for Dr. Mensa as its guardian. This will hopefully set an important legal precedent in the future for future construct and bot human relations. There hasn't been mention of it in recent books, but I think it's been barely an in-book year since they started, and legal stuff takes a while. As for the CR as a whole, they have a major chunk of the galaxy's worth of people, culture, and societal pressures to fight against. Even so, both Prezox and now, I'm infuriated that I have to say this shit out loud, PSUMNT are pushing back as much as they can, whether that's by disabling governor modules and rescuing constructs. We're just flat out lying! Flat out lying! Forging documents so planets can keep their independence from the CR, or producing a documentary exposing the CR and the company to other free systems so they can understand and join the cause against them. Flat out lying! In the grand scheme of things, it's not much, and it's still problematic sometimes, but they have to start somewhere or nothing will ever change. Yes, the Prezox team and Preservation in general are racist against constructs, but they also acknowledge that they made mistakes, apologize, and do what they can to fix it and make better decisions in the future. They freed SecUnit without its input in all systems. They freed SecUnit without its input in all systems red, but in network effect when everyone wants to disable 3's governor module. Oh my god! Okay. I'm screaming. Oh my god. I will continue reading, I swear to fucking god. They freed SecUnit without its input in all systems red, but in network effect when everyone wants to disable 3's governor module, they listen when SecUnit says no, and Raffi even apologizes for being pushy about it. You can't make this shit up, folks. I will continue reading. Oh my fucking god. Racism is never okay, no matter who it is. But being quirky, queer, brown characters isn't what makes Prezox good people either. The Prezox team are good people because they acknowledge their mistakes, genuinely apologize, do their best to make it right, and learn from what happened so they don't make the same mistake in the future. That's me slapping my face in, oh my fucking god. Do you hear this shit? Oh my god. Continuing. Oh my god. As individuals and as a culture, the world would be a much better place if we did all that. If we all did that. And that's why I love the Murderbot Diaries. Right now, billionaires or governments conspire to keep all the money and power for themselves and shove the consequences on everyone else. Martha Wells wrote a hopeful, speculative fiction about a society that tries to care for each other and, more importantly, tries to improve and learn from its past mistakes. We can learn a lot from Murderbot about how to fight overwhelming, oppressive systems. That theme of pursuing character growth. Oh my god. That theme of pursuing character growth, especially when it means admitting when you're wrong, will always cause more real change than condemning other people's rhetoric. Fucking god. Racism exists in Murderbot. It exists in the real world, but Martha Wells and many of her readers condemn it for what it is, even as they acknowledge that it exists and it sucks. Just because racism is in a piece of media doesn't mean that media is saying it's okay. Also, I have read Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, and while that book is totally worth reading, it is a completely different goal to Murderbot. And then in parentheses, true history showing people the realities of slavery versus speculative sci-fi extrapolating corporate greed to an interstellar level. Okay, that was the end of Feed the Birds. Oh my god, do you hear this shit? Okay, and then, okay, after I've scrolled up, do I have to comment? Do you understand what they were just saying? Please tell me you understand what they were just fucking saying. Oh my god. Novella November responded, presumably on the same day. I don't know. I'm not checking the dates again. Again, none of the above addresses the point that 7 books in, the narrative itself is still upholding slave owners' lives as being worth far far more than the disposable slaves our protagonists keep mowing down, to the point that the protagonists refuse to even try to free a slave, with the excuse that doing so would somehow require Murderbot to murder a bunch of slave owners to hide what it had done. 7 books into the series, and we're still torturing slaves to death like it's just a cool action scene and not horrific beyond compare. It doesn't take 7 books and 3+ side stories in a series and 8 real-world years to actually have a former slave character, and then in parentheses, who is still enslaved, but by nice guys, so it's not really slavery, and parentheses, unlearn racism and stop murdering other slaves and prioritizing slave owners over the lives of the people they're keeping enslaved. Actual victims of slavery do not go around wholly believing the horrors they were put under were in any way justified, let alone years after being freed and having the opportunity to free other enslaved folk, and instead choosing to prioritize the lives of the white masters instead, from the evil slaves getting revenge. The preservation team lodging nominal complaints off-screen does not change the fact that they still willfully rented a slave, treated that slave like an object, did not give that slave medical attention or any attempt at compassion, and had absolutely no intention of freeing the protagonist at all until it had repeatedly put itself at risk of violent death to save their lives, including a literal suicide attempt. The story and narrative that wants you to think it is romantic for enslaved folk to kill themselves to save their rapist slave owners is a racist story, no matter how nice the main character slave owners are. It doesn't take almost a decade to care about other slaves in a series. Instead, almost a decade since the series started, and we're still demonizing freed slaves as being mentally ill and cannot be trusted around slave owners lest they go on a violent revenge rampage. Demonizing and pathologizing the only named freed slave who wasn't framed as an antagonist in the series is literally, textually, a huge retcon from book 5 to 7, and such word-of-God retcons are blatantly racism and built on, once again, real-world slavery apologism and racist myths. And then there's another link. Let's fucking hope this still exists. Okay, yes. history.com/articles/debunking slavery myths. And there's dashes in between at the end. I'm going to archive it. Last archive, November 22nd, 2025. It's getting archived today. As I almost choke on spit. Novella November continues. We once again still have defense of the series coming in the form of excusing individual characters' actions, because there's some vague hand-waving in the background about trying to build a legal case. These hand-waving excuses mean literally nothing when we're still torturing slaves to death for cool action scenes without a thought in the 7th published book. Instead of making excuses to say background protagonist characters aren't actually bad because they're good slave owners, how about we try talking about the deeper, harmful themes of racism and slavery apologism that has been baked into the series, which includes viewing all slaves who are not the protagonist as disposable NPCs who should kill themselves to slave their owners. Did you, by chance, even notice how people kept in sexual slavery committed suicide to save their rapists, and this is framed as noble and heroic in the 2nd book, and you're not supposed to question this at all? Did you notice that the protagonist was mind-raped while it was unconscious by 2 of the good slave owners in the 1st book, and you're not supposed to notice or be horrified? If the series isn't racist, why is it still upholding and protecting slave owners at the direct cost of the lives of the people they're enslaving? If the series isn't racist, why are we ripping slaves apart limb from limb while they're still alive and conscious to make the protagonists look cool? Why are you looking at a post about deliberate writing decisions by an author with a known history of racism and pulling fictional reasons to justify the slavery? Why are you bringing Watsonian justifications, and then in parentheses, and headcanons not supported by the text at that, end parentheses, onto a post talking about Doyleist critiques? And then that's the end of Novella November's reblog, and then it's the part where I put that shit, what they actually had under the read more, and then I reblogged it again and said, Never let these stands keep anything under a read more, because they can edit what's under there at any time, and it'll follow all our blogs, so they can just flat out lie about what they said the first time. I've seen it happen multiple times now. This person is, of course, flat out fucking lying about so many things to pretend that the series takes slavery seriously at any point. Quote, Murderbot refuses to let them pat themselves on the back, end quote. Insult of your choice, you are literally making that shit up out of thin air. Not once in this entire goddamn series does anything even remotely like that happen. Pro tip, if you have to blatantly lie to try and defend the series against criticism of its unending slavery apologism, that's your sign to stop fucking trying to defend the slavery apologism, because even you know it's literally fucking correct. If the series actually took slavery seriously and didn't want us to worship slave owners, while not giving a single shit about all the slaves who keep getting tortured and murdered by the good guys, you wouldn't have to fucking lie, now would you? And then I reblogged it later, presumably months later, and said, so now that rapport is out, and we've all seen with our own eyes that Art's disgustingly rich slave owners literally casually walk past ongoing genocides that they have the power to stop, without even thinking about wanting to do anything about it, do you think the fandom is going to stop falling for the promise that Martha Wells has broken 3+ times now that things will finally start changing? Art's slave owners are not going to do anything to help anyone. They sure as shit are not going to stop slavery that they actively benefit from as slave owners. They won't even lift a finger to stop a genocide that is fully within their power to stop. They don't even think about wanting to help anybody that are literally being led to the slaughter right before their eyes. Quote, the space colonizing university of slave owners is totally going to fix everything, end quote. Yeah, it's literally just more slavery apologism that Martha Wells has convinced you that a university that owns multiple planets, and you're supposed to think this is cool and progressive instead of horrifying, that literally owns slaves and is literally inventing new forms of slavery, is progressive. And as far as I can tell, that was the last comment. I have to... Wait, click. Wait, go back. Clicked on my bookmark about River Cane instead. I have to reblog it quick and add the correct link, or at least message the fixed link to Novella November. Oh, there's so many scrolly things. Click. I'm typing. Looks like the Trump administration took down one of the original links, so here it is on the web archive. Exact quote. Looks like the Trump administration took down one of the original links from the government website, so here it is on the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. Click. I don't think you can send URLs in asks, but I'll just put it in the replies. Can I click? Okay, so I put the link in the replies and tagged Novella November so they can see it and edit it into the original post so that people can continue reading the thing. Okay, neither of us responded to that part of the thing, but the person literally was claiming that the Preservation Aux team made a mistake in supposedly freeing Murderbot at the start of book 1. They literally objectively did not free it, but this person is claiming that if they had, that would have been a mistake, and that they are learning. What is the fucking sarcastic shit people say when they're not actually apologizing, they're just making a fake apology? Listening and learning. This person in November 2025, at least, I'm hoping they've grown and stopped being this happy to be a slavery apologist, literally claiming that freeing Murderbot was a mistake. That was abusive. And they've learned from that mistake. So next time they choose not to free a slave, to show that they've grown as people. this person is literally just repeating the slavery apologism that we are criticizing. Literally saying that it is a good thing that the slave owners don't free slaves, because freeing slaves is the real cruelty, which is literally a message that this book is sending, and Martha Wells is sending, and the message has been received, and the very people who are claiming it's not doing slavery apologism will just flat out say that explicitly. They made a mistake in freeing Murderbot. They've learned from that mistake, so then next time, Raffi apologizes for asking Murderbot if they can free another slave. You cannot make this shit up, as I keep saying, and as you have gotten yourself, if you listen to enough of these videos or you are on Tumblr and see this shit, Martha Wells is literally training her audience, including people who are claiming to think critically about it, into thinking that if they simply repeat the exact slavery apologism that we are criticizing back at us, that makes it not slavery apologism. Novella November literally said, we literally do therapy speak. The slave owner literally does therapy speak about not freeing slaves. And we do therapy speak. Martha Wells does therapy speak about how it's good to not free slaves. And then that person literally pulled out that exact fucking example of exactly what Novella November was criticizing and said that was a good thing because the slave owners, that they're nice slave owners, so they don't count as slave owners, they've learned their lesson and don't want to free slaves anymore because that's mean. Literally saying freeing slaves is the real cruelty. You cannot make this shit up. Bye-bye.